Welcome back to Studio Life, everybody. Today we're going to have a little chat about what to do about difficult clients. When you're mixing or mastering, quite often you get clients that give you grief in various ways. Let's find out, is it? So yeah, this is something you're always going to come up against at some point. A customer who isn't happy in one way or another, or a customer that is causing you to be unhappy and not enjoy your job, or to not be able to get the best out of yourself. They're not getting the best out of you. There are quite a few regular occurrences, different things that happen in this line of work. And I thought it'd be interesting to talk about them and see how we can work around these things, because it happens a lot. So the first one we're going to talk about is when they send you their mix files and then they send you some reference tracks, and those reference tracks are nothing like what they've recorded. This happens to me quite regularly, and it's basically the artist saying, without saying, this didn't come out quite how I wanted it to, but this is what I was aiming for. And you've kind of got two choices at this point. You can point out the obvious and say, do you know what you've sent me and what the reference tracks sound like, they're very different. They're almost different genres. There are some things we could do to push it in that direction, but I don't think we're going to entirely get there. Or you can suggest, do you know what, maybe you need to go back and change the style of something. Maybe the drums don't fit the genre. Maybe the bass style doesn't fit the genre. Maybe there's something in the arrangement. It could be a whole bunch of things. But more often than not, they're oblivious, and they just don't understand why they haven't nailed what they were supposed to do in the recording in order for it to sound like the reference. That's a difficult one, because there's quite a lot of scope for you to get the blame. Oh, it doesn't sound like what I sent you. It's like, well, it was never going to. It isn't. There's no commonality there. That's difficult. I would always advise having a frank and honest conversation with the artist or the label about it. Just sort of say, look, have you got some more relevant references, or is this really the direction you want to go in which case I think it has to go back into the production stage before it's ready for mixing. That applies to mastering too. I get sent reference tracks quite often for mastering which are just different genre. I'm like, are we talking about the tonal balance here, or are we talking about, what are we talking about? It's really can throw you. So that's a good one to watch out for. Another common one, not so much now, I don't think I get it very often anymore, but I certainly used to get it, and that's when you've finished a mix or a master and you get an email a couple of days later, oh, we listened to it in my mate's car and it's too boomy, or we can't hear the vocals enough, or the guitars are too quiet, too loud, snares too loud, too quiet. And then at that point, you have to have an honest conversation with yourself, really, and say, do I trust my room? Do I trust my monitoring? Do I trust my mixing? Do I think I've nailed it and they're listening to it in a less than ideal environment? That could be something that's happening. Or is it a taste thing? Have what you've done work for your taste, but maybe not for your client's taste? That could be it too. It's always worth having the conversation and saying, look, I understand that you trust your mate's car. Maybe you listen to everything in there. But I have a custom built studio with a great frequency response. My mixes are used often. I hear them on the radio a lot. Therefore, I trust myself. Maybe you should listen to it somewhere else. I think something to bear in mind with that, especially if it's mastering rather than mixing, it should sound great everywhere. So if someone's coming back to you at all with issues like that, you need to look at it. There's probably a problem somewhere that you've missed. With a mix, slightly different. It's a mastering engineer's job to, rein it in and make it work on everything. It's not really a mix engineer's job. You're trying to get the general vibe and nail that mid-range, the very important bit. It's a difficult one, mix translation. It can be a never-ending argument unless you find a solution. I rarely allow the artist to be with me when I'm mixing. I don't mind them coming in to hear it in here, but there's nothing to be gained by them being here generally. It just makes everything take longer because you have to explain what you're doing all the time. But it can be a way around it. Sometimes they feel disconnected when they're not there when the work's being done. So they have a natural propensity to be defensive when they hear it. There's nothing really you can do about that. I think it goes away the better the reputation you get. You know, in the last few years, I've had quite a lot of the stuff I've mixed been played on the radio a lot. And that's good because, A, people hear your stuff out there. They trust that it sounds right because it's being played on the radio, right? But also you get a lot of confidence out of that because you hear it in so many different places. When you've heard it in the car, you've heard it in a cafe, you've heard it, you know, wherever. It's like, this works. This sounds great. You know, so that changes the perception of how good you are, and your clients will react differently to you at that sort of level, I think. But yeah, mixed translation is a difficult conversation to have, and you need to be sure you know that you're nailing it before you get stuck into any arguments around that. Gearheads is what I'm going to call this next one. Gearheads. More and more of a problem lately, I would say. You probably know the kind of people I'm talking about. Some of you will be those kind of people. Probably hang out on Gearspace quite a lot, comment on a lot of things. Nothing wrong with that. Everyone likes a hobby. But we're trying to do a job here. And someone telling me that I need to use a specific piece of gear, whether it's on a mix or a master, or asking, can you run this through your whatever? That's really nothing to do with anybody. I rarely tell anybody what something went through, what gear I used. There's nothing to do with anything really. And if people are that concerned about it, they're wanting the wrong thing. They're probably going to be disappointed. You know, people, not often, but every now and again since I got the SPL iron, have said, oh, can you make sure it goes through the iron? And I'm like, you're not going to be able to tell whether it did or it didn't. You know, my masters didn't suddenly get 10 times better because I started using an SPL iron. It's a, you know, minuscule difference to what was happening before. It's a lovely bit of gear and I do use it most of the time. But if you are wanting to hear the results of a specific piece of gear, your head's in the wrong place. So gearheads are difficult to work with, and I generally try and avoid it because you're gonna butt up against their prejudices against gear they don't like or don't respect against pieces they do. They're probably better off doing it themselves. The next one is changing a mix after the master. So this doesn't happen very often, and it's nearly always a problem with new clients. Not always. I've had it with some established clients before, but with new clients it happens. They send you their finished stereo master, or stereo mix, sorry, ready for mastering, and there's nothing massively wrong with it. So, you know, you don't go back and say, oh, you need to change this or that, which I do if that is the case. There's nothing wrong with it. So you master it, you send it back. And the first bit of feedback you get is, oh yeah, do you know what? Since I've heard the master, I've realised that the snare was too loud. So I've just done another mix. Here it is. And we're like, okay. But if that is a completely different mix, you know, sometimes they've recorded it perfectly and it's just turned the snare down or whatever it was, and it's not too much of a job to do that again. But sometimes the mix changes radically because while they're there, oh, I've just noticed that guitar's a bit too loud, the bass is a bit quiet, the kick drum's a bit too much attack on it. They've done a bunch of other little things, and then you load up your session again and go, what's happened? It's not working. So you pretty much have to start again. And I've had clients where that's happened multiple times. They keep changing things. I think there's a couple of ways around this. The first is to recommend to people, put a limiter on your mix before you send it. Don't send it to me with the limiter on unless you really want to, in which case that's fine. But listen to it once it's been squashed a bit more, just so you know what that's going to do to the overall sound of it. And then take the limiter off and then send your mix. That might help get around that. But yeah, it's infuriating. I don't mind doing revisions. And you'll generally find the bigger, more important clients want fewer revisions than the ones who are coming to you for the first time, and maybe, you know, they're just people working for themselves. So it's a difficult one. You just have to at some point say, do you know what, we've done this song 5 times now and you keep changing the mix. That's moving the goalpost too much. You need to send me a definitive mix, I'll master it, and then we move on. Tricky one. Finally, the one I've put is overwork. Now this is something that only happens when you're working with the client in the room. I don't do much of it. This is one of the reasons. But I've worked on sessions where we have been mixing all day, every day for a few weeks, and you instinctively know, or I instinctively know, when I need to rest. I need to go and have a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, get some fresh air, rest my ears. I talk about it a lot in my courses. It's really important. And sometimes you work with clients who will say, right, we're going to go from now and then we'll have a break at 1 for lunch. And it's like, yeah, that's fine. But at some point in between that, I'm going to go and take 5 minutes a couple of times, because that's how I work. That's how I refresh my ears and stuff. So make sure you're running the session. I don't care if there's a producer or a client or whatever. If they want to get the best from you and you want to be able to deliver your best work, fine. If you thrive on just ploughing through, 10-hour days, great, do that. Personally, I need to go and get some, ear rest time every now and again in order to do my best work. So yeah, don't be afraid to sort of like state how you feel about that kind of stuff. And it's like, do you know what? If you need lots of coffee, make sure someone's on the case. If you're running your own facility, that might be you making the coffee, but ideally someone else should be sorting that out. Someone else should be sorting out lunch, whatever it is. Try and put yourself in a position where you can work unencumbered by these other decisions and things that are going on. It'll make your day easier. And then have a cut-off time. Everybody has a different way of looking at studio life, pardon the pun. Certainly when I was young, I would work through the night, no problem whatsoever, finish 5, 6, 7 in the morning. Loads of times I came out the studio, sun's up, people are going to work. That happened all the time when I was young. I ain't doing that now. I will get to a point in the evening where it's like, do you know what? I'm done now. I'm going to finish for the day, have some dinner, see you tomorrow. That's a decision you have to make, and people have to be comfortable with it. I get it, it's not always going to work. There's certain situations where you have to go above and beyond to capture the vibe, capture the moment or whatever. Totally down with that, but not all day and not every day. Anyway, there you go. Just some things that can happen in studios when you get difficult or not particularly helpful situations. I hope that's helped a little bit. My advice would be have your own place if you can afford it. Work remotely. I think it's kind of the future. It's nice sometimes to be with other humans and to interact, and I understand that, and that happens sometimes. There's a sofa here, there's another chair here, I can have people in here, but realistically, if you want me to do my best mixing and mastering, leave me alone. Anyway, moving on. If you could like the video, that really helps. If you could subscribe to the channel, that helps even more. There's my Instagram, which is Mixdown Mastering. There's the website where you've got the top 5 plugins and also courses on mixing, mastering and a bunch of other stuff. And I will see you next time. Adios, people.